As Far as Anyone Knows is a mostly Latino history podcast where each week your hosts, Minerva Angeles
and Fredo B,
take turns sharing some Latino history,
bad jokes,
and ancestral love. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of As Far as Anyone Knows. I am Minerva Angeles.
And I'm Fredo B.
And we're here to tell you some stories. Today, I'm really excited to share with you an amazing woman who happens to be of Asian descent. So I'm excited to share with you, in solidarity, everything that's going on right now. I wanted to just remind Latinos that there are Asian Latinos. And today we will talk about Chinese Nicaraguan Arlen Siu. Before we do that, Fredo, do you have anything you want to talk about?
I guess in the spirit of Women's History Month, I just want to talk about and appreciate two giant women in the music industry right now, and really talk about Cardi B and Megan the Stallion.
Okay. All right. Yeah, let's do it.
I just appreciate them. Mostly Cardi B I'm bringing up because she's been getting a lot of flack on the internet over her WAP performance at the Grammys.
Which was an art, it was an art installation.
It was amazing. It was, I think people take it too seriously. At this point, she's performing camp. It's high camp at this point, what she's doing, where it's like, it's very tongue-in-cheek. She knows that she's being provocative in a way that really gets to people, the right wing, like Candace Owens and people of that nature. At this point, she's doing it to fuck with people, right? So to me, I don't understand the vitriol that she gets. She's been nothing but genuine about herself, about who she's been in the past, who she is now as a woman of color, an entertainer, a mother. And the fact she's been very candid about the fact that she is not your child's parent, and you need to parent your child. And if you don't want your child to listen to WAP, then don't have them listen to WAP.
Yeah. I also don't understand the general conservative mind frame that it's Cardi B and whatever woman they're mad at today's responsibility to create in the interest of that person's family. Ma'am, we don't even know you. It's like, who is this music for? Oh yeah, I wrote WAP for my 5-year-old because I love her and I just want her to feel empowered. Like, what the fuck? Obviously, that's not for
when she grows
kids.
up. Yeah, it'll be.
Yes, but what I'm saying is it's very obviously not for children, and just people people saying, what am I supposed to tell my kids is the craziest thing to me, because I'm just like, what are you what are you going to tell your kids? Why would you be putting your kids near this on purpose? If they happened upon it, they could walk in on you, getting some WAP. What are you going to tell them? That's your responsibility. You're the parent. Figure it out. What is Cardi B's responsibility?
I suppose if you're listening,
shut up.
I suppose if you're listening to the radio, it comes on, you're like, oh my, clutch pearls. But
even the radio edit, again, there's so much edited there that it's kids of a certain age aren't going to know what it means, and the kids that already know what it means, honey, that means you should have been having this conversation with this child.
Yeah.
And this conversation now is going to be a little different. And, we just want to make sure we clearly understand the nuance in this song, and that we are, moving forward with consent, with education, with empowerment of our bodies. That's where you take that conversation. I'm not doing this. This is not a parenting podcast. Minerva Angeles is also not responsible for parenting your children. Yeah. So if you are listening to this podcast and you think I shouldn't be dropping F-bombs, you need to go find your Latino history somewhere else, homie. I just cannot.
Listen, and no, I hope that high school, middle school people are listening to us because you're learning some gems. Yes, we curse. Sorry,
So do
sorry.
the
I'm
high
so sorry. I'm
schoolers.
so sorry to the history teachers who trying to assign this to
Listen, at one
But
point, yeah, we'll get a Patreon. Y'all could pay for e- episodes where we've paid someone to bleep out the curses,
edit out all the
or we
curses.
can edit out the curses. We can do that for you, but it's gonna cost you because
Yeah.
nothing is free.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
Free Minerva and Fredo has curse words.
But back to Cardi B and Megan the Stallion. I think we really need to step off our high horses and really just appreciate the fact that these two women, black women, and I got into not really an argument, but like I had to put somebody in their place again on the internet because it's only Twitter fingers, where somebody said that Cardi B is not a black woman.
Here we go.
And I'm just like, no, Cardi B is a black woman. But whatever, we're not gonna get it. That's not a discussion today. But I just wanted to put that on the side.
People be confused.
Yeah.
People be real. I mean, and it's a confusing topic, but not when you look at Cardi B. Like it can be a confusing topic when you look at someone and they're ethnically ambiguous, or you're just like, have never met someone from a particular place, maybe. But when you look at Cardi B, we're not having this conversation.
No, like, I'm not.
It's like when you look at her, you just look at her and you're like, that is clearly a black woman. Let's move on.
Yeah. And the thing is that, listen, I don't want to go into this rabbit hole because it's a real deep rabbit hole. But the comment, and I've seen comments like that mostly from black people, black women, other black women who say that Cardi B is not a black woman. There's a lot to unpack there, and I don't think I'm the most qualified person to talk about it, as I am not a black woman.
Yeah.
For those of you who are wondering what I look like, I'm not a black woman. But Cardi's undeniably black. You look at her, I'm like, okay, that's a black woman. But regardless, I say that to again, where we should be celebrating these women as the fact that they're really progressive. They're pioneering a different era of rap music. Whether or not that's your type of rap music, that's neither here nor there. But they're selling records. They're they're winning awards. So I think people just need to get used to the fact that they're here.
It's not that people need to get used to anything.
Or just accept.
No, what they have to accept is their own racism and bigotry and misogyny that lives in them, that has a problem with their existence.
Yeah.
The problem is that they have a problem with their existence because there's a whole bunch of stuff I don't like in this world. You know what I do? Not participate in that thing I don't like.
Yeah.
I don't have to listen to that stuff. It is a choice. Especially now with the way everything works out. Like, you get away with your whole life never having to watch television, never having to listen to the radio. You can curate your entire life to specifically just things you want to do. Right now, we don't even have cable. Right now, everything we watch is like something I heard was recommended to me off Netflix, or I saw on the internet, or whatever. And again, if your whole feed on your internet, your whole feed on your social media is 100% people that you associate with that like certain things. So if you have somebody on your timeline who's pushing Cardi B WAP, and that's not your thing, feel free to silence that person however you should on that social media platform. And you could go ahead and mind your business.
You want me to like a tweet or Instagram post Cardi B or Megan Thee Stallion?
But you understand what I'm saying? There's people who just do not know how to mind their business because they have the power and the domination to be able to come over here at a left and talk to people and tell people what to do with their mouths, what to do with their bodies, what to do with their creativity. Please take that elsewhere. Stay away from black women. leave black women alone. Goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
I'm over it.
On a different note, but still with Cardi B, I find it so. When was it? Like, was it like a couple? It was within this week. So our daughter was listening to something on YouTube Kids, and it sounded very familiar to us, and we were like, "Wait, what are you listening to?" And it was like, I don't think it was Kids Bop, but it was like Kids Bop adjacent. The Kids Bop version of Cardi B's Bodak Yellow.
Bodak Yellow. It was wild.
So I didn't hear the lyrics.
The lyrics were like fine. It was more that it was because I caught like the beat.
The beat, yeah.
And I was like, "What? Hold up." I did kind of like a double take, and I looked at her. I was like, "What?" And then I looked at you, and you were like, you looked at me confused, and I was like, "No, bro, that's Bodak Yellow." And then she didn't know what that was, so she just starts laughing because she has, you know, a really good sense of how do you say it? Just like she can pick up on context really well. So maybe she didn't know what Bodak Yellow was, and she didn't know exactly what we were reacting to.
But she knew we were very confused.
Right. She knew the song triggered me to respond like that to her father, and she knew that it was already like we were like experiencing a level of discomfort that she thought was entertaining. So of course she
starts singing whatever. I don't even know what the lyrics were, but it was again to the tune of Cardi B's Bodak Yellow.
And she's like, "I like this song," and I was like, "Uh-huh." And I just kept it moving because
I'm just like, I do too.
Yeah, because I know with her, or just like with kids anyway. But like once you start to make something a big deal, then that's when they really sort of like take it to the next level. And since that night, she has not brought it up again. We haven't heard her singing it. And it doesn't even matter. And to be clear, the clean version would have been fine with me, but it was more about like me. I noticed in that moment that she could tell that I was uncomfortable, and I was like, I need to address that in myself, because you know what I don't want is eventually when we get to the point where she's listening to that music and she's, you know, enjoying it, I don't want her to read misogyny in me. So, you know, part of me was like, all right, let me just chill because I don't want her to think I'm judging the music in and of itself. It was more that, you know, my reaction was really about like a child being presented with Bodak Yellow. Bomb song though. Yeah, that song just went diamond.
Good for
like
her.
Literally, and she's like, I think she like broke another glass ceiling or whatever because there's apparently several. It's the glass ceiling is actually like a fucking building. And it's just, we keep having to break various ceilings. It's very confusing.
Yeah.
I'm starting to think there's not a real ceiling.
There it just keeps going.
Yeah. So she's like the first female rapper, I think, to go diamond in the amount of time that Bodak Yellow has gone diamond.
It's been like what, a couple
like years? Maybe like, I wouldn't say a couple, it's a few years. Because I remember, like, it was a few years ago.
Yeah. Listen, go download some Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion. It'll make you feel good.
Just, oh my God. And Megan, just make everything about Megan.
First of all, there's no reason why she's so pretty.
Why is she so pretty? No, she is, like, beautiful.
Yeah.
Yo, there be times where I just, like, because, you know, obviously I Instagram stalk her. And she's like, I don't know.
Without makeup.
Like, just for but she has no right.
Yeah.
What gives you the right?
She also posted a picture of her, like, I think she was like 16, 17. I was like, what the kind of 16, 17-year-old is this? Jesus.
Yeah. No, but, I mean, they're just people that, like, beauty-wise are, like, destined for fame or whatever. And I always say this. I say this both about Cardi and Megan. I've been known to say this, like, you know, my whenever they come up anyway, is that, like, it's crazy because they're so beautiful and they're so talented. And, you know, I always think about this. Had they been white, like, the trajectory of their careers, how different that would have been. Not that there's nothing wrong with stripping. We support sex work out here. But if, you know, that's a choice that they made that, like, was...
Stripping's not sex work in general, right?
Yeah, it's considered. It's under the umbrella.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
wow.
It's like, it's a stepping stone that they used career-wise to get to where they are, which was, strategic and a good choice for them. It clearly worked out in their favor. But would they have had to do that had they been as beautiful as they are and white? That's a hard no. I mean, look at Dua Lipa. Come on. Okay, we have to stop talking about this. All right, I'm sorry.
I don't want to bring it down another woman.
Yeah, we shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry. I'm going to edit that out. No disrespect to the Dua Lipa fans if I do end up keeping this in. Yeah.
All right. So, Minerva, tell us a little bit more about who you're talking about today.
About your paisa.
Yeah, I don't use that word, but
no, yeah. But this is a Chinese Nicaraguan person who had quite a bit of a story, really inspiring story in Nicaragua, and her name is Arlen Siu Bermudez. I believe her mom was Nicaraguan and her dad was Chinese, is what I was able to tell from looking at that. Like, it looked like her dad was like a businessman all around like Latin America, like a Chinese businessman. And, he settled in Nicaragua with his boo. And she had 7 kids with him. Yeah. And, yeah. And our girl was one of them. And they called her, she was from Jinotepe.
Okay.
And they called her La Chinita de Jinotepe, which is very on brand for Latinos.
Can we just say, like, side note, like, I know there are several Asian communities in Latin America, and regardless of what part of Asia you are from, you're going to be referred to as Chino. That's unfortunate.
Us. Yeah.
We're working on it
in that we're not collectively, but very there are small groups of us that are.
Yeah. But in this case, she is a Chinese woman.
In this case, she is.
Chinese descendant.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think in some cases there are, like, so I know, like, because it always makes me laugh. Like, my mom used to say when I was a kid, esa gente sabe más que los chinos de Bonao. And, o esa persona sabe más que los chinos de Bonao.
Are there Chinese people in Bonao?
So my whole life, I laughed this off.
Okay.
Like, very, like, this is classic Dominican nonsense, right? Like, Dominican Dr. Seussisms. Yeah. I don't know. Like,
for those of you who don't know, Bonao is a town in
the Dominican Republic. And it's a province next to my province. So I know it well.
Okay.
And I'm just kind of like, I don't know, I'm just like, what's she talking about? This lady crazy. So, turns out years later, I find that we actually get into a conversation about it. And my mom confirms that there are actually, like, I want to be clear, I don't have any confirmation of this. And that my mother is a very on brand with the Dominican hyperbole. So, do what you will with this information. But she said, that there was actually, like, a Chinese family, or several families, unclear, that, settled in Bonao, and, it looks like they kind of, like, they're, like, considered wise, because that's the, kind of, like,
that's the Asian
analogy that my mom kept making. But it sounds like, they probably did a lot of the acupuncture or whatever, Chinese medicinal stuff that they do that's so amazing, and it's popular because it works. So, yeah, that's, like, I think where my mom got it from. In any case, I think that's, like, I used to laugh it off because it is, like, in that genre of, like, Latinos just kind of, like, doing these weird groupings of whatever nonsense.
All
and then
Asian
you're not
people are
sure.
Chino.
Right. Or, like, people say, like, oh, nosotros somos chino. And they'll say, like, we have some Chinese ancestry or whatever. And, like, I have literally never believed that. But so there, there's stuff like that happens with Latinos a lot. So, I just thought this was interesting in the sense that, here we go. Here's an example for all of us out there that have a difficult time understanding that there are Asian Latinos, because Latino, you guessed it, is not a race.
Yeah. Okay, we digress.
Okay. More on La Chinita de Jinotepe. So she is basically a real thoughtful, caring, sensitive person. She's always sort of seen as a leader in her family and in the community. Um, she was raised Christian, had a Christian religious upbringing, as the rest of her siblings did as well. From an early age, she also showed great artistic passion as well as the social sensitivity about the reality that was surrounding her. One thing that's really interesting to bring up about her is that one of the things I guess that she's really sort of famous for is her talent with singing. She was a musician and she was a poet. So she was a writer. She could sing. She could play the piano. She was like really creatively, really skilled. She was born in July of 1955, and she was born in Hinotepe and had lived there her whole life. One time, while she was helping her sister with a homework task, she actually wrote a song, which I think is just like such a beautiful consequence of being creative, where you're just like, I'm gonna do something that has nothing to do with anything, and now it's a song. So she had really sort of had like a connection with what was going on in the community and what was going on around her. It's understood that she did have a level of privilege. You know, as we know, her father was a businessman and he had been known to have business in Colombia and other countries. And she was educated, did have access to college, was sort of like, I guess, in her first semester of college when she passed away, which we'll talk about in a second. And so, you know, she's probably considered around middle class. But she was like very sort of keenly aware of the poverty around her and the inequity in the country during the 1960s, 1970s, which we're going to get into very, very little bit because I know at some point you want to get into this deeply.
Who knows?
You know, if you ever get to it, I want to make sure the door's there, or the window. I've opened the window. Okay. So the song that she wrote for her sister's homework was inspired by what she'd been seeing in the streets and around her. And I'm going to read some of the lyrics to you in Spanish, and then I'll read them in English. So she says, Hoy quiero cantarte, María Rural, oh Madre del Campo, Madre sin igual. Hoy quiero cantar tu vástigos pobres, tu despojos tristes, dolor maternal. Today I want to sing to you, rural Mary, O mother of the country, mother without equal. Today I want to sing your poor offspring, your sad remains, maternal pain. And you know, it just really showed like her creativity, her beautiful ability to write, but also her empathy, her real understanding of what people were going through, because that certainly wasn't her experience. And she was probably like 16 when she wrote this. So for her to have that connection with people and with the struggle is really interesting and beautiful. So, many of her songs actually did discuss the conditions that poor people have to live with in Nicaragua, and she was uniquely aware of what women were going through. And a lot of her activism really spoke to the plight of the woman in Nicaragua and with the poor people. So I'm gonna cut to 1972, and Nicaragua has a severe earthquake that year, and there was a great loss for many. Refugees migrated from Managua and other places in the country. Shout out to Managua, that's where Fredo's family's from. And the city of Hinotepe was one of the destinations where sort of refugees kind of like migrated from. And that was kind of a monumental moment for her because she was able to really see how badly the earthquake affected people, but also how disappropriately it affected poor people, because now these people have nothing, and they're coming to these places and they have nothing with them, just like the clothes on their back, and trying to figure out how they're going to move forward. So it did strengthen her social commitment. Her and other comrades in her Christian organizations organized a shelter for the refugees, received them with coats and food to appease their situation, and they also helped facilitate literacy classes in rural areas. So, in her interaction with these people and really kind of getting into it, really woke her up to the injustices and inequity going around on a really deeper level. Her mom reflected that when she was about 16 years old, she would question to her, why are there people in jail? Why are people in jail for so long? And I'm going to get into the government situation in a second so we can give a little context to the injustices of the criminal justice system, if we can even call it that. And she'd read the newspaper, and her mother would have to have conversations with her about the information that was in them about murders and rapes of the campesinos and campesinas, and the most vulnerable people, and how this was all being orchestrated or executed by the government. So we're going to cut to a little bit of the background of the social situation in Nicaragua at this time. As we kind of established a little bit, if you listen to the Rigoberta Menchú episode, we talked a little bit about how the U.S. was really sort of in the middle of the 20th century, and around this time, similar time frame to Guatemala, was really ingraining themselves in Latin American lands. They were basically sowing the seed. And I found this blog that talked about it, and the way that they talked about it. It's in Spanish, so I translated it in English for you guys. But it was a really sort of beautiful way to put such a horrible action. But the U.S. imperialism basically sowed the seeds of exploitation, extravagantism, and repression. And basically, it was, using sort of a national security doctrine as a tool to achieve their own tasks for, their capitalist gain, right? We know that a large number of U.S. fruit companies were concentrated in Nicaragua, and most of the fields were destined to the production of bananas, cotton, sugar, and exported. Also, were exported to the United States. So there are, a history of abuses by the United States towards the Nicaraguan people. It contributed to the assassination of Augusto Sandino, who was a peasant seeking the liberation of Nicaragua. And it was really a transfer of power to the future dictator, or was basically a dictator during the time that Arlen was really sort of experiencing these injustices or observing these injustices. Anastasio Somoza, whose family succeeded him in office. So in 1961, opponents of Somoza founded the Sandinista National Liberation Front, which is, the acronym is FSLN in Spanish, in honor of Augusto Sandino, who, as I mentioned earlier, was killed. They were in charge of confronting the Somozist National Guard and formed guerrilla groups in the rural areas where poor and unemployed peasants were concentrated. Which again, when we say these guerrilla groups go into the mountains, we know that the guerrilla warfare, and we can do actually we should probably do a whole episode on how guerrilla warfare was created in Latin America, and that's what it's all about. Mm-hmm. But in addition to it going into the mountains for strategy reasons, in the act of war, it also really kind of gets to the communities that have the most issues with the government, that are being most oppressed by the government. So it also serves as a great recruitment strategy. Um, so as she's seeing a lot of this stuff going on, she's very moved by it, and she's done as much as she can do, that she feels that she can do from where she is at. These social services that she's putting in, all these connections that she's making. She basically decides at this point that she's gonna join the guerrilla army. And before she left to the mountains,
as a Sandinista, so she joined the
she's
Sandinistas.
joining the Sandinistas, the FSLN. Okay. Obviously, this isn't an easy situation. At this point, she is just 18 years old, and she's got to figure out how she's going to convey this information. So she tells a friend that she's going to get sent to China. This is like her best friend. She's like super aware that that's false. Like, why would your family send you to China? That doesn't make any sense. And but she knew that basically it looks like she was setting the groundwork up so that the framework up so she can go to the mountains and not necessarily have to not deal with people being worried about where she was. She one day tells her mom that she's going to take a test, and she in fact does not go to this exam. She goes to the mountains.
She just goes join a guerrilla warfare. It's cool.
It's like whatever. So her siblings do what siblings do during this situation.
Snitch.
No.
Oh.
Cover for her. So they totally covered for her. And they tell the mom that she went to like Colombia.
Why?
To go to school.
Okay.
Like a whole other country.
Sure.
I mean.
And mom believed this.
And like dad has business there, so I guess I watched a documentary on her, and I was watching it and like feeling her siblings. She had one sibling who, by the way, was named Marlon, and a niece. She had a sibling and a niece, and her mom were interviewed for this documentary, and it was filmed in, obviously it was a Nicaraguan show, and I will make sure I get that in the episode notes as well, so you guys have the link. So she told her family that she would go to Colombia, and that's what the siblings told the mom, which of course did not add up. And there was a very interesting response from the mom that I detected there. It was very clear that the mom knew, everybody sort of knew, but no, it was like this unspoken thing, and everybody was just hoping that she would be okay. Which unfortunately does not turn out to be the case. So before she left, she did leave notes and poems and stuff behind. So I think that's also what we have to remember her by, and I think contributed to how well remembered she is and how she's seen as a real historical figure, because there's a lot of documentation about her beliefs and the liberation of Nicaragua and all that. So I think it's really beautiful to also see that exists. So it is said that while she's up in the mountains during the night, she's in the settlement of El Saucese. I think that's how it's pronounced. Sorry if I mispronounced that. With her companions. Everyone is in front of a stove. I guess it's like for heat purposes, with their rifles rested on the ground, and there's like memories and people like sort of sharing their war stories that this is the scene that they're setting up, and that she's playing the medley of Maria Rural with her guitar, and sort of bringing comfort to everybody and reminding everybody like why they're there and what their common struggle is and what their goal is, really. So unfortunately, on August 1st, 1975, about a few weeks after her 18th birthday, the guerrilla settlement was exposed, so they knew where to find them. So the National Guard did exactly that. Heavy combat was fought by air and land. Arlen helped her companions flee until, unfortunately, she could not, and she was shot down. So, one really upsetting um, thing I learned when I was watching the documentary was that her remains were claimed by the government. So when originally it was, her family received the body. At this point, the body's severely decomposed. You can't really tell who that is. But unfortunately, her mom just knew this is not my daughter's body.
Okay.
And so, unfortunately, there's like an additional fight that has to continue after her death, where her family has to push back on the government to get a hold of the right remains, which is an incredibly, sad process that the mom reflects on when she's being interviewed. And, she respectfully holds on to the cadaver that she does have until she's able to reunite with her child. And it really isn't until the triumph of the revolution that they are actually able to get the correct body.
So this is like years later.
Yeah. And then she was able to give the body that she did have back so that that body can, be reunited with their family. Mm-hmm. And, she just reflects on that moment. It was a very emotional moment where she just talks about, like, just knowing when she got the casket and just putting her hand on her child's head. And it's just, could you just imagine just a cadaver? And, just really reflecting in that moment of how, she just knew. And as a mom, I got to tell you, I totally understand what she meant by that. And, nobody should ever really have to go through that to say bye to their child that way. One thing I wanted to share was at the letters that she did leave behind for her family. There are quotes available from those pieces. And one of the letters says, "The tenacious struggle of man towards perfection is true love. We are more authentic to the extent that we break down barriers and limitations, confronting with courage and optimism the vicissitudes that come our way. And you get to discover one day that you are capable of more than what is asked of us, and that we can achieve what for some is forbidden or impossible." And that is the story of Arlen Siu.
She was wildly articulate for a 17, 18-year-old.
Right? There was that word. Okay, let's just do this for a second. Vicissitudes. I had to look that up, everybody. I also had to tell Google how to tell me to pronounce that word because I had never heard that word before. Mm-hmm. And just so we're clear, it means a change of circumstances or fortune, typically one that is unwelcome or unpleasant.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So, I think it's a this is an important story to tell. I mean, I've never heard of her. Again, somebody who is lost in time. Luckily, her story still lives on in some form or fashion, right? I think, more than ever when we're talking about discrimination in the Asian communities or the Asian diasporas, or not just in the United States, but around the world, right? Yeah. Because I think people tend to forget, or when we have like an American mind frame where like, the U.S. is the main context of it, or we have it centered that that kind of stuff only happens in the U.S. People are othered in all over the world, right? Mm-hmm. The United States is not the only place that gets immigrants. People typically immigrate to the nearest country to them, mm-hmm. right? And I think, with the Asian community, there's discrimination, there's the stereotypes. Even within Latin American context, there's the model minority, right? Mm-hmm. There's like, oh, they're so smart. They're what your mother would say, like, yeah. They're so wise. They're hardworking. Um, so those things are still in place there of the model minority, but they're still very much othered. Um, in the context of, like, again, we just refer to them as a monolith as like Chino.
Mm-hmm. No,
Everybody's Chino.
the fact that she was considered La Chinita de Jinotepe is, Jinotepe, sorry, La Chinita de Jinotepe is very clear that, she was other in those situations. Like, that's how we identify her.
Yeah, I'm assuming she went into the mountains and to fight for this war, and she was one of the very few
right
Chinese people, definitely Chinese women. Just be very clear, there was a lot of, like, and this could be its own thing. There were a lot of women in the Sandinista fight, so like in the
FSLN.
war,
yeah,
in the against the Somoza regime, there were a lot of women fighting, and so it's not unlike movements in Cuba and elsewhere in Latin America, where definitely the rebellions in the mid 20th century really recruited a lot of women to be a part of these things. So the story of Arlen isn't unique in that regard, right? A lot of young, optimistic women took up arms, and a lot of them ended in a similar fashion. But again, what it is unique to Arlen is the fact that, one, she's of Chinese descent.
mm-hmm.
Two, she was somebody who didn't have to pick up the fight.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She could have just continued and gone off to college and got her degree and continued to live a comfortable life. I don't think she was rich by any stretch of the imagination, but she was comfortable. But she saw the injustice that was going on, and that's what really makes a true leader and makes a true, an icon or somebody who you could look up to, right? Because it's in those moments where, what do we do when it's something wrong is happening that's not affecting us?
Yeah.
Right? Because it's very easy for us to turn around, look the other way when it's not affecting us.
Yeah.
But it's in those moments where, like, what do you do when other people are being oppressed? She stood up. She and her family, again, to their credit, understood that. Yeah. I'm not so sure what her father, because it didn't seem like her father knew what was happening.
I mean, it sounded like he was, like, away doing business.
Okay.
So they kind of used that to their advantage. But I'm not sure how much, he wasn't in the documentary, and I didn't get a lot of information on him.
So he may or may not have been in the picture.
He was in the picture. It's just what his involvement was during this time when she had gone away.
Yeah.
That's unclear. But he was, the matriarch was kind of holding the family down while the father kind of handled the business side
as is typical, usually. So yeah, in that regard, like, the family, it was a known secret, right? It wasn't like, girl, you weren't fooling anybody. Like, you're not in Colombia, you're not in China.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she done traveled. All right. She did Carmen Sandiego and everybody.
Like, all right, cool.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it was more of a let them down easy kind of.
Yeah.
Hey, let's just tell everybody this story so everybody knows I'm okay, because let's save everybody the conversation of, no, don't go to the mountains, because I'm going to the mountains. So here you go. Why don't we just say it in code so nobody has to go do this back and forth?
Because nobody else is really gonna just flat out say, you're lying.
Right.
Because it's all plausible, right? Because well, you are smart. All right, I guess they're sending you to China. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess you're going to school in Colombia.
You use words like vicissitudes, so you can do anything.
How's that said in Spanish?
It's very similar.
Okay.
It's very similar. And I didn't know it in Spanish either. And I was like, girl, what word is this? So I translated it, and it was helpful.
That much. It's still like, okay.
No, vicissitudes. Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Yeah, okay. So, again, this is somebody who, as Minerva pointed out, my family is from Nicaragua. This is somebody that we definitely don't know about, or at least I haven't been talked about, too, about. That whole time period. So my family does talk about the big earthquake of 72. And they do talk about the war, like that ongoing war, because like eventually the war came from, like, got out of the mountains and into the cities, right? I have older cousins who were there during the time, and like one of them got shot through the leg, a crossfire, so there's like stuff going on there that eventually it did bleed into everyday life for the majority of Nicaraguans, and hence why my family eventually fled, because even when the Sandinistas won, it still wasn't like pleasant. You're talking about like a transfer of power that wasn't peaceful. So yeah, my family fled in the late 70s, early 80s. And that's how most of them got here. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. I thought you would enjoy this. I told you were going to like it. I hope, though, that we can do the Sandinistas in some more detail. I think that there's a lot to that story, and I kept a lot of details.
Well, you kept it really brief.
I kept it super brief because I was like, all right, I don't want to go too much into it. Because I want to do a whole, like, or I want, to have the opportunity to do a whole
might, again, like very much of a lot of our stories, there's so much detail, and a lot of it starts with U.S. Intervention or U.S. meddling, backing, financing, training, because Anastasio Somoza, the first, because there was more than one. Anastasio Somoza, he was trained by the U.S. government. So when you say, because you mentioned National Guard, and I don't want people to get confused. We're talking about there's not the U.S. National Guard. It's talking about the Nicaraguan National Guard that at the time was led by Somoza before he became president. Then eventually became president. So that's it for today, folks. Thanks for listening.
Ha-home. See you soon. Follow us on social media. You can follow our podcast at AFACPod. That's at AFAAK Pod. Or follow our hosts, Minerva at It's Minerva Angel and at Fredo_B on Twitter.